Hello, Michelle. How are you?
I'm good, Aubrey. How are you?
I'm great. Are you a risk taker?
I don't I, I don't think I'm really big into like the physical risks. Like I'm not
Mm,
gonna go, climb the highest mountain or I'm not gonna go skydiving, but I have taken, personal risks in my life
mm,
that, just like moving to different places,
absolutely. That's a good
things
point that
like
there's a
that.
difference between like professional risks or risks, life decision risks, and then like putting your
Yeah.
life at risk. Some people go cliff jumping from 30, 40-foot cliffs. That might not be us. I did when I was younger. I took some real physical risks when I was younger. Today, would no, thank you. I have too much to live for.
So it depends on the kind of risk.
Totally.
I mean, some people, I sing in front of people. I
Oh,
mean, some
yeah.
people might say that that's taking a risk. It just,
It is absolutely. A lot of people
yeah.
could never. Yeah, I just did stand up comedy last night actually, and a lot of
Oh my
people were.
gosh, I
I
have to
was
hear this,
telling
Aubrey. I
people,
used to do stand up too.
that's so fun. It's actually crazy that we both did it because so few people do, and it was just
Yeah.
open mic, but so fun, and a lot of people would not because you are putting yourself out there, and it is taking a risk. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, exactly. So, guys, maybe you can guess, but today we're going to talk about risk taking, which is a topic that often comes up in speaking part two and part three. It
Hmm.
can also come up on part one about your social life or work. So, what are
Absolutely.
we going to do today, Aubrey?
Yeah, you are going to learn 5 high scoring phrases that will make you sound fluent, natural, and impressive because IELTS loves abstract topics like this, taking risks, decision making, your personality. But students often use really basic language like take a risk. It was scary. You need to upgrade that vocabulary. So, we're going to teach you some high scoring phrases. And then we're going to give you a sample part 3 and speaking part 2. So, stay to the end so you can also get those sample answers.
Definitely. Okay. So let's upgrade your vocabulary now. Okay.
Let's do it.
So the first one, I love this one, is to step out of your comfort zone. And this means to do something unfamiliar or challenging. We all have that place where we're comfortable and sometimes we just want to stick to that, right? But
Yes.
if you step outside of it, you do something, even if it's just a little bit different, you step outside of your comfort zone. I hear step out or steps outside. What do you think,
Both.
Aubrey?
Yep, both. Both are
Yeah.
correct. The examiner's not going to bat an eye to either of these. Step
No.
out of your
No.
comfort zone or step outside of your comfort zone. Exactly. So, an
Right.
example, I decided to step out of my comfort zone and travel alone for the first time. And this, yeah, I
Oh.
remember when I was 18. That was definitely stepping outside of my comfort zone to go by myself to Europe. I was traveling on the trains, backpacking
Wow.
around, and I was young. And that was out of my
Amazing.
comfort zone. I had grown up in Idaho, like never had traveled alone on my ever. So
Yeah.
that was a new experience for sure. Kind of scary.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible.
It was fun.
Yeah. And then the second one is weigh the pros and cons. So this means to carefully consider advantages and disadvantages. So when you're thinking about taking a risk, you will often, actually consider these. Aubrey, do you ever, if you're trying to make a decision, do you ever write a list and then actually go by it? Or do you
I
think that some
never do.
decisions
I
are
never
too,
write a
yeah.
list, but I know people do this. I probably should. I do not. Do you? Do you ever write a list and follow it?
Sometimes I don't write a list, but like I will
A
mentally
mental
have a
list.
list.
I've done
But
that.
but there are certain things in my life where it's all signs point to not doing something.
Yeah.
But all but my heart says differently. And
Yeah, sometimes you
so
got to follow your heart. But this could be
exactly.
about
So
work too. You might say, before changing careers, I weighed the pros and cons very carefully. You will be asked
yeah.
about on part 1, either work or study or home or hometown. You need to practice those answers. And this is great, right? If you did have a job change ever, let's talk about how you weighed the pros and cons.
Yeah, I love it. And then this next one is take a calculated risk. Now, this is interesting. So this is taking a risk after you think carefully about it, right? So you've kind of thought everything through. You've thought of all the possible outcomes. So for example, she took a calculated risk by starting her own business. Yeah, that's not a risk like, just that you can make willy-nilly, right? Take willy-nilly.
Exactly. This means you have thought about all of the possible consequences. You're aware that this is a risk, that it might not go well. You have thought about it. You're taking a calculated risk, knowing that it might go really well, might go badly. I am aware of the consequences, and this is what I am choosing. It's interesting.
Right. Yeah.
And then face the consequences is the next one, which is to accept the results of your decisions. Yeah. For example, he knew he would have to face the consequences if things went wrong. So you're taking a calculated risk, and you're willing to face the consequences if it doesn't go well.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is kind of the aftermath of the taking the risk.
Exactly.
When we see what happens. And then this is another great one, a leap of faith. So this is doing something without being completely sure it will succeed. You think of, this one, when you think of leap and you think of jump, I mean, skydiving or, mountain climbing or, you're doing a leap of faith, but it doesn't always have to be about actually jumping.
Exactly. This is very idiomatic, right? There are times I've taken a leap of faith. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. I know I'm taking a risk and I'm hoping it will go well. And I know you hear this word faith often associated with religion. This is idiomatic. It's nothing about someone's religious beliefs. Atheists also take leaps of faith, right? It just means you don't know what's going to happen. You're hoping for the best. You're making a decision without knowing what the consequences will be.
Yeah. So for example, moving to a new country without a job was a leap of faith. Well, that reminds me, when I moved to New York, I didn't have a job.
That's a leap of faith for sure.
Yeah. So, but yeah, when I think of, Lindsay and I have talked about this a lot, how the twists and turns that your life goes on. And had I not taken that leap of faith, everything in my life would have been different.
Yeah. And it is interesting, though. You could definitely call that a calculated risk because there's so much job opportunity in New York City. It would be it would definitely be a leap of faith to move to my hometown without having a job lined up. Because unless you want to work for a farmer, there are not a ton of jobs there, right? There are not as much opportunity. So it's interesting. If it's a big city with lots of jobs, it's still a leap of faith, but it's more of a calculated risk because I'm probably going to be able to find a job.
Right. Exactly. All right, guys, we're going to take a break, but then we're going to go over some answers in just a minute.
All right, let's do a couple of sample answers here, Michelle. I'm going to ask you a speaking part 3 question. Remember, guys, these can be up to about a minute, but need to at least be like 3 to 5 sentences. They don't always have to be that long. Sometimes they won't be because if the examiner needs to ask a certain amount of questions, they might cut you off early. So it's okay for some of these to be shorter. So let's have Michelle give us a little bit of a shorter one on this. Your question is, do you think people should take risks in life?
Well, absolutely. Taking risks is essential for personal growth. However, I also believe it's vital to take calculated risks rather than acting impulsively. So I try to weigh the pros and cons before making a decision, but sometimes you also need to take a leap of faith to achieve something meaningful.
Perfect. So much great vocabulary here to say taking risks is essential for personal growth. And then vital. It's vital to take calculated risks. This is all Band 9 vocabulary. Students don't use it very often, so it's much higher scoring. And to say rather than acting impulsively, what a great chunk. And then you use try to weigh the pros and cons before making a decision. And interestingly, if you had time to make this longer, what you could then do is share some kind of personal example when you have taken a risk in life. You don't have to, but remember on part 3, even though these questions are sort of about society as a whole, you can still use yourself and the people you know as examples in those questions, as long as you answer directly. If you just say, well, for me, I think, for me personally, I take risks, you're not actually answering the question, do you think people in general should take risks? So remember, you can use personal examples, but you still have to answer the question. And if it's about society or people in general, you need to answer about society or people in general.
Yes, definitely. So now we are going to let Aubrey answer a question about risk taking. So this is, we're going to do a speaking part 2 question and answer. So that means, Aubrey, you have 2 minutes.
Exactly. So I have to fill 2 minutes, guys. So remember our strategy to tell a story. It would be difficult. So many part 2 questions are difficult to talk about to fill the full 2 minutes without a story. So I'm definitely going to tell a story here. I will try to use some of this vocabulary, this higher scoring vocabulary. Go ahead and give me my question. And Michelle, be sure to time me for 2 minutes. Remember, guys, you hear this from us a lot, but you are going to hear the examiner say to speak about this for 1 to 2 minutes. That is an IELTS trick. You must speak for the entire 2 minutes or your fluency score will go down. That is a sign to the examiner that you don't have more to say. So don't think, I've spoken for about a minute, I can stop. Speak until the examiner says thank you, which means the 2 minutes are up in order to get the highest fluency score.
All right. My timer is now ready. So I'm going to ask you your question now. All right. Here we go. Describe a time when you took a risk.
Ooh, when I was accepted to do the New York City Teaching Fellows program, this was definitely stepping out of my comfort zone for a few reasons. We had to move from Arizona to New York City. And it absolutely was a leap of faith because we found out we were expecting our second child and that I would have the baby during the training for this Teaching Fellows program. I called them and asked, can I miss any time of the training? And they said, absolutely not. If you miss a single day, you are out of the program. I said, but I'm going to have a baby in the middle. They said, sorry, you can't miss any time. So our only option was to schedule a C-section on Friday after training was over. And then I had the baby Friday evening. I was in the hospital Saturday and Sunday, and I was back at training on Monday. And it was bonkers. I survived it, but I was so excited about the program. It was such a good opportunity that I decided to take this calculated risk. And it did end up paying off. I loved the program. I'm so glad I did it. I was able to complete my master's degree while teaching in an inner city school. It was a fantastic experience, but this was really scary. I was petrified that something would go wrong with the birth, that something would happen and I would have to stay in the hospital longer, because by then I had already completed a couple of months of training and we had moved from Arizona to New York. So we would have really been in hot water if it didn't work out. We would have been up a creek without a paddle and had no idea what to do. It would have been really tricky, especially because at that time my husband was a teacher as well, and he could not have gotten a job as a teacher in New York because there was a hiring freeze. Schools were only allowed to hire teachers that were already on payroll, that had tenure, because they had 1,600 teachers tenured. Ooh, I could talk forever about that.
It seems like you could. And it's so hard for me when we're doing these, because it's so hard for me not to react to these stories if I don't know that much about them. I want to be like, whoa, that's great, you know? So
Good job playing the examiner. Like, I cannot react.
Thank you.
But yeah.
I wonder if examiners ever have a hard time not reacting to something.
Right? If you guys say really interesting stories or say something kind of shocking, it might be hard for the examiner not to react. And they might every now and then. They might forget they're not supposed to react in some way. But if they don't, it's because they are being very careful, like Michelle just was, to not respond because they're not supposed to.
Yeah. So I really loved this. It was a great story. So you used a lot of the vocabulary we talked about. You said you had to step out of your comfort zone. You talked about this decision being a leap of faith. I mean, you were moving to New York City, and then certainly, being pregnant. Wait, this was your first child?
No, we did already have, Adeline was 2 when we found out we were expecting Penelope. So I did my master's degree and I worked full time. And my husband, Cole, was a stay-at-home dad the whole time we lived in New York City. So he had Addie, she was 2, and a brand new baby the whole 2 years that I was teaching. And it actually was great because it gave him perspective of how difficult it is to be a stay-at-home parent. So he is so helpful around the house, always has been.
That's really good.
It's been fantastic for us. But also, it's so hard to have really small children in New York. We lived in Manhattan. He has stories. He also had a lot of fun, but it was difficult getting the stroller up and down the subway stairs and trying to get to the grocery store and to Target the first year we didn't have a car. And he was just figuring it out. He had the baby and the baby Bjorn and Addie in a stroller. And you've been there. It's tough. It's a lot of work. It was much easier for me teaching in an inner city school in the Bronx and doing night school for my master's degree than for him home with two children.
It is really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just loved how you told this story. I mean, you talked about, thinking about, you talked about the conversation you had. Oh, I tried to say, can I miss any of the program? And
they said, absolutely not.
Yeah. I know, but I'm having a baby. And they said, no.
Too bad.
And yeah. And then I believe that you used calculated risk.
Yes. And I was saying it was a calculated risk because I did think through I know what could possibly happen. I'm prepared. I understand. We'll figure it out if it doesn't work out.
And then did you talk about facing the consequences? I was prepared to face the consequences if things didn't work out. Prepared to face the consequences.
And that is great vocab, this very topic specific vocabulary to use when you're talking about taking risks. And remember, this doesn't have to be specifically about something that you've already thought was a big risk. It could be pretty minor, right? It could be asking someone out on a date or going to a restaurant you've never been about. It could be things that are very low stakes, and you could still use this vocabulary, especially where we love to exaggerate, use hyperbole, and talk about that, trying a new restaurant. I was prepared to face the consequences if it wasn't as good as I expected. That's still really fun.
Yeah. And then I think, didn't you say something like you would have been in hot water?
Yes. I said we'd be in hot water. And I said up a creek without a paddle.
These what it was. Yeah.
Idioms.
Those were both great.
I'm glad you remembered those because you need idiomatic language on the IELTS exam. You need to throw in idioms like that. And these are great ones when you're talking about risks, that you might be in trouble, that things might go badly. Use those idioms.
Yeah. And then, of course, I loved, how naturally then you moved into your situation with Cole and the teachers for, the hiring freeze. So it's just great that you are able to just keep on going. So until the examiner says thank you. So guys, that's really important. Again, you can start flowing into different things, just sharing more about the story, just getting deeper into it. If you need to use more time, that's fine.
If you have answered the question, talk about anything related. You might think, isn't this off topic that her husband couldn't get a job? Absolutely not. I answered the question. I could start talking about my Aunt Virginia and how she used to live in New York. It doesn't matter. It can be totally off topic as long as you have answered the question.
Yeah. So I love that. So do we have a listener challenge for today?
Yes. We want you guys to answer this question out loud using at least two of the phrases you learned today. Is it better to play it safe or take risks in your career? So practice answering that question. Record yourself. You could write it out first. Practice answering. Don't memorize it. Practice using it without learning it word for word using this vocabulary.
Yes. Love it. Guys, if you haven't already, check out episode 1608 of the IELTS Energy podcast. That is Who Inspires You? How to Nail This Common IELTS Question. So check that one out as well.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Super fun today. I will see you next time. Bye, guys.
All right. See you. Bye.